And on today's Chasing Rainbows author series, I get to interview my very good friend, Jill Cornell. I can't wait for you to hear her amazing story. Hello, my friend Jill.
Hello, my friend Rochelle.
Oh, it's so nice to have you here with me. So I'm just going to say a couple things. First of all, Jill and I have been friends for many years, and we actually met through another friend, Cheryl. And she just showed up in my life at a very difficult time.
Mm-hmm.
You were one of those rainbows of my life. And this beautiful person came in and helped out with family food, brought food when I was having a really difficult time with being diagnosed with MS. So we stayed friends.
Yes, we did.
And I think that over the years, we've become closer and closer. And you're one of those people who I think we prove through friendship that you don't have to always be on the same page, right?
No.
We have very different ways, and many times Jill's planted seeds that have grown within me, and I think I might have planted a seed or two.
Well, my seed was lasagna in a tinfoil dish that you didn't have to return to.
Yes,
so
just in case it didn't work out.
No pressure.
No pressure. Okay. Jill, there's no one better to tell your story than you. Could you give us a little synopsis?
The synopsis of my story is called The Road Home. And for me, it's almost been 2 years ago. It was the summer of 2021. We were in the middle of COVID. People were very separate, high stress. I had broken my foot again while I was on vacation, and I wasn't feeling well, and I was having problems breathing, and I was under a lot of pressure. I just thought that I wasn't handling stress and anxiety well. I just felt like a failure. And looking back at that time too, things were crumbling down around me. I just felt that I didn't have control, and I was very sad and broken. One night early August, I started having problems breathing, and I've never experienced this before. It was all of a sudden I just couldn't breathe, and it was like like a rapid breathing. I kind of shook it off, thought maybe I'm having a panic attack because again, I was just
and everyone at that time was talking about having panic attacks, being not feeling well. They were overly stressed because of COVID.
Yeah.
So I know you're someone who just kind of wants to press forward. So you would just kind of, put that on a shelf and carry on, right? And women, especially moms too, we tend to do that because we don't have time to be sick. And I know you're a hardworking woman, so I can see you just totally doing that.
Yes. So I wasn't feeling well. I went to have a shower, and while I was in the shower, literally I just felt life just completely drained completely out of me. I toppled out of the shower. I called for help. I had a hard time. I couldn't even barely speak. And so my husband and daughter, they came rushing up, and I just could not catch my breath. And so then we moved me into the bedroom. Still, my breath came back a little bit, but it was on and off. And this went on all night long. And at one point we were discussing, should we go to the hospital? And I'm like, and I was convincing myself, I was convincing my family that, no, this is stress. I can't even,
and since then we've realized stress kills.
Stress does kill.
Yeah.
And so through the night, I still was having these attacks. If I stayed still, they seemed to be better. The nauseousness came. It was, my daughter slept on the floor beside my bed. She was so scared. And I feel guilt about that now because it was pretty scary for her. Yeah. And she wanted me to go to the hospital. My husband and I were saying, hey, we both got to work tomorrow. It was just,
we don't have time.
We don't have time for this. Yeah. So in the morning, I woke up. I kind of felt a little bit better. I went to go about my routine, and by lunchtime again, I started having the breathing attacks. And so my son was home. It was summer vacation. And I said, call your dad, tell him to come home and get me, and we'll go to the hospital. So never had this happen in all the history of going to the hospital. But when I went into triage, they escorted me right through and said, come this way. And I had an EKG, every test you can imagine, including a CT scan. I had a CT scan within, I think, 45 minutes of my arrival at the hospital. And to find out that I had a full-blown pulmonary embolism. They called it a saddle embolism because the embolism went crossed both, all lungs, all lobes were filled with blood clots, and I was experiencing strain on my heart.
Yeah.
And and pretty much my life changed that day.
Mine did too. Just Jill's not one to, she's very private, even with her best friend. So I didn't hear about it right away either. And I've always kind of been in our relationship the one who needed help. So for the very first time, well, not first time, but such a close friend, being so sick, I couldn't stop thinking about that every single day. I now understand what my friends have gone through. And so, I mean, I'm just going to put another thank you out there because,
well, I don't plan on doing that again.
Thank you. And I thank you for that.
One night early August, I started having problems breathing. And I've never experienced this before. It was all of a sudden, I just couldn't breathe. And it was like like a rapid breathing. And I kind of shook it off, thought maybe I'm having a panic attack because again, I was just.
Well, and everyone at that time was talking about having panic attacks, being not feeling well. They were overly stressed because of COVID.
Yeah.
I know you're someone who just kind of wants to press forward. You would just kind of, put that on a shelf and carry on. Women, especially moms too, we tend to do that because we don't have time to be sick. And I know you. Yes. You're a hardworking woman, so I can see you just doing that.
Yes. I wasn't feeling well. I went to have a shower. And while I was in the shower, literally, I just felt life just completely drained completely out of me. I toppled out of the shower. I called for help. I had a hard time. I couldn't even barely speak. And so my husband and daughter, they came rushing up and I just could not catch my breath. And so then we moved me into the bedroom. My breath came back a little bit, but it was on and off. And this went on all night long. At one point we were discussing, should we go to the hospital? And I'm like, and I was convincing myself, I was convincing my family that, you know what? No, this is stress. I can't even.
And since then we've realized stress kills.
Stress does kill.
Yeah. And
so through the night, I still was having these attacks. If I stayed still, they seemed to be better. The nauseousness came. It was, my daughter slept on the floor beside my bed. She was so scared. And I feel guilt about that now because it was pretty scary for her. Yeah. And she wanted me to go to the hospital. My husband and I were saying, hey, we both got to work tomorrow. It was just, we don't have time. We don't have time for that. Woke up. I kind of felt a little bit better. I went to go about my routine, and by lunchtime again, I started having the breathing attacks. And so my son was home with summer vacation. And I said, call your dad, tell him to come home and get me, and we'll go to the hospital. Never had this happen in all the history of going to the hospital. When I went into triage, they escorted me right through and said, come this way. I had an EKG, every test you can imagine, including a CT scan. I had a CT scan within, I think, 45 minutes of my arrival at the hospital to find out that I had a full-blown pulmonary embolism. They called it a saddle embolism because the embolism went crossed both, all lungs, all lobes were filled with blood clots, and I was experiencing strain on my heart. Yeah. And my life changed that day. Mine did too. Jill's not one to, she's very private, even with her best friend. So I've always kind of been in our relationship the one who needed help. So such a close friend, being so sick, I couldn't stop thinking about that every single day. I now understand what my friends have gone through. And so, I mean, I'm just going to put another thank you out there because, Well, I don't plan on doing that again.
Thank
So
you.
I hope you
And I thank you for that.
that was my major event.
Yeah.
And
it was your life-changing event. How do you think that God can use this story? I've seen such growth in you since this has happened. But are you also kind of surprised that God's not only using this for your own growth, but now he's also using it in a book
that I did
a
not see
chapter in a
coming.
book that you didn't see coming? Oh, by the way, I did. And and now this podcast. And then, hopefully down the road a TV show. So,
well, I think that for me, in the whole process of having this happen to me and then healing, I still was stuck on the whole stress factor, that I was stress and anxiety and I wasn't managing things well. Through my journey getting help for mental health, I realized that I experienced trauma. And so I think in my story, the trauma opened up in me a need to heal, a connection to God, finding a home in myself and my heart that I
the
had
real
never
you,
really had.
the true you, right?
And also, it opened up the opportunities to heal all of my other hurts. Right. And I hate using the word trauma because I have a wonderful life. I had a wonderful childhood, but there are things that happened in my childhood that caused me to seek my home outside of other people, to not be accepting of myself, to feel like I wasn't good enough, to, do what made others happy. I was a big time people pleaser.
Yeah. I think part of that is that you're a people pleaser, but I also know you, Jill, and you have a huge heart.
Yeah. It wasn't manipulative. I was
like Anne, you are a humanitarian heart, right? And that's natural in you. However, that can be taken advantage of by less than gracious people. And when you're out there and you put your heart out there fully, like you do, unfortunately,
you do find these hurts.
Traumas come to you, right? Yeah.
So my feeling is that I want people to learn from my experience that you don't have to almost die to really understand how to live and to heal.
Yeah.
Healing is not easy. Healing it's a lot of work. A lot of reflection,
and it's never finished. And,
no,
and the thing about healing is the scars are there, right? But they don't have to be wounds anymore. I think I learned that from Cheryl Weber. She had heard it somewhere else, but scars actually get tougher, right?
Yes,
wounds and they heal over. They're still there as a reminder, and sometimes maybe the weather changes and it aches a little bit. But it's not a wound anymore, right?
No, it's a reminder.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong that the triggers or the ripples that Anne referred to, they still come up. But when you are connected and you have a loving heart and you aren't always reacting to things and you're actually stepping back and you're being kind to yourself, you're the observer of what you're feeling. And the biggest thing that I found out was that hurts and pains or discomfort, even anger, I suppressed it.
Right.
And now I allow myself, if I'm disappointed in something, I allow myself to feel it. I acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And then I give it to God.
A growth that I've seen in you now is that you don't take it in, go away and let it fester anymore either. Right?
That's a big.
And instead now, but when you have a discussion with me or something that maybe we're not on the same page about, you're comfortable. You're comfortable saying it to me now, and I don't have to wonder if you've misunderstood, and you don't have to wonder if I've misunderstood. Actually, there's such clarity in it that I think it makes relationships
it makes it so much better, and it's very freeing. And the one thing that I appreciate so much from you too is that you call me out on my stuff, right?
Maybe we should
not in a bad way. But I mean, like, like it's refreshing to have people who stop me and say, well, yeah, but what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you know what? You're not that person anymore. So let's move on.
Let's move on and do great things.
So that is really important to me, because I have found through this whole journey that it is an adjustment because you will learn that people will see past versions of you. And that's out of your control. That's based on their past experiences. And that's okay.
Well, and sometimes, I'm sure as you've learned, as we grow, it makes people who are on our team uncomfortable. And they want to keep you right where you are.
Yes.
And sometimes it's under their thumb, sometimes it's right next to them. But they don't want you to grow because then you'll be able to see who they are and they're not comfortable with who they are, right?
True. Yeah.
So I've learned to look at people who try to drag me back to old Rochelle and old ways and realize that they're stuck.
They are.
They're stuck. And so I feel for them. I smile. I might give them a little nod to the past and then I carry on. Right.
Exactly.
And I've seen, in you, I've seen so much
phrase that I heard last week that was, when people treat you like a doormat, leave them at the door.
Right.
They're not meant to stand beside you.
Yeah.
And that was the hard thing.
Yeah.
I think too, was discerning between, who is an acquaintance, and acquaintances are lovely. They're wonderful. Right. And who is your friend? Because this is where I struggled, is that I built my home in other people. And I adjusted myself to be what I thought other people would want me to be for them.
Because clearly that's the preferred version of Jill.
You. But that goes back to, I understand now why I was that way. And I can take responsibility for it. And I can recognize it when it's happening.
Well, we're both in our early 50s. Am I allowed to say that, or do I cut it out later? But I'm so happy to be here.
I am. I wouldn't trade.
And because now we're at a point where we've seen pretty much all in relationships with people. We know what works and what doesn't work. But we also have learned and you and I have discussed this, that we've learned along the way that people treat us the way we allow them to
treat it. Yes.
The second time. The first time they might do something. But it's on us if we're not comfortable with it.
And to speak up and have boundaries.
Right.
And I, even understanding boundaries now, boundaries for me now is my safe space. And so if I do say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not comfortable with that, or say, why did you do that? That, I asked you not to do that, please. Just boundaries. But boundaries is like my inner circle, my safety. My safety. And
the only people in that circle are people that deserve to be there. Right. It doesn't mean that people, your friends aren't going to make mistakes.
No, if I say no,
a real friend will say okay
and accept it, and not to have an explanation or not to feel guilty about it, or to
Right. Yeah, that's what my dad always said. No is the explanation. If they require more, you can give it to them if you feel like it's justifiable, but you don't have to.
So
I like that. That was a good teach, Dad. So, all right. So this one's going to be a tough one. What was the scariest moment during that attack?
The scariest moment for me, it was very strange because when I couldn't breathe and I fell out of the shower, there was a moment where I heard like a rainforest. It sounded beautiful. And I remember reaching over and looking and trying to grab the taps because I thought the water was still running and it wasn't. And it was in that moment that I felt I'm going to be okay. It's okay. It's okay. But then I also felt this voice, and it came from within saying, it's not your time. It's going to be okay. And that carried me. And then I think the scariest part was in the ICU after the dust had settled. Because it was COVID, I was only allowed 2 visitors, so I didn't get to see my son. So the last time my son saw me was when Kevin was rushing me out to the hospital. And the ICU is so dark and quiet, and it is peaceful too. But the thoughts that just took over me, and honestly, I'd never in my life gone to sleep wondering whether I was going to wake up the next morning.
Right. Right.
So, and all they give you is a little pill. And the pill's not going to take away
your pill.
the pills aren't going to take away the blood clots.
No.
The pills stop the blood clots from forming,
Right.
and your body has to dissolve. So on top of that, I had the burning in my chest.
Yeah.
I couldn't breathe.
You feel horrible.
Horrible. I was hooked up to oxygen.
Scared.
I was scared.
Yeah.
My care was exemplary. Like I was given everything I possibly needed at that moment to give me the strength to hang on.
That's right. That's right. And just kudos to, NGH.
Mm-hmm.
People like to kind of get down on our small town hospitals, but I'm gonna tell you, if you go in with a broken finger,
Mm-hmm.
this is the reason you're waiting.
Yeah.
They're saving a life.
Yeah.
Right. So no apologies for that.
And I learned
we're very
something
blessed
too.
to have that.
I
kind
did
of
not
care.
know that the people who were closest to the desk are the people who need to be closest to the desk.
Right.
And I've never been there before.
Yeah.
So, and also too, this is the other thing, is that in that moment, there were people that were in far worse situation than I was, because you can hear everything in the room, as confidential as everybody tries to be.
Yeah, you can.
So at the same time, being absolutely afraid, but then also being grateful that, so that was the scary moment, was not having seen my son. We did not tell my parents. We didn't tell
her
anybody.
best friend.
No, honestly, we
No,
waited.
that's
We
fine.
waited till the dust settled. I
Yeah.
don't even think I told you until I came home from the hospital.
Yeah, it's true. I still love her. I probably love you more. Okay. Wow. Did this experience, do you feel as though it's changed you for the better? Well, I would say yes, because you're clearly pointing that out. But what would you say is the strength? What is your biggest strength you've got from this?
That I live in the present. I did not realize how much I was recreating the same day over and over. And I was living in the past, and I was holding on to past regrets, past hurts, and there was no creativity. I was just lost. I didn't have a home. It's
like our own version of Groundhog Day.
Yeah. It was
only a painful.
Yeah. And when you live in the present moment,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not worrying about the future, because your back's covered.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about the past, because it's in the past. You can take the lessons from it, and you can learn from it, but your past is not who you are.
No, your past lessons are not who you are either.
No.
You can take even what you learned from your lesson and move forward with it. It's lighter than carrying the entire lesson.
Mm-hmm.
I had a dream one time about carrying all of everything, my past, my lessons, everything in a sack, and God telling me step the way to set that down, and it got lighter and lighter. Mm-hmm. So I would imagine you were starting to feel lighter and losing the stories. Yeah. And another thing is that I always pride myself on my memory. Mm-hmm. It couldn't be my age, but I don't think so. But I'm not ruminating. I am not going back, because I was a person who would say, oh, did they take it okay the way I said that? Yes. Or oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. I'm one of those people that go back. I'm in a struggle, or I'm meeting resistance. I was always automatically thinking, what am I doing wrong? What can I? And now I realize, when you meet that resistance, that's a redirection. Mm-hmm. That's a redirection away. Yeah. I live in the present moment. I'm so grateful. I don't know, to wake up every day with gratitude and with love, and to think about what you can create and what you can give back, and not be at a deficit. I was living in a deficit. My cup wasn't even half full. Yeah. It wasn't. Well, and we can't give until we're complete or filled.
It's the overflowing of your cup.
Right. Too many people try to share from a very empty cup. Mm-hmm. And it takes you down.
It takes you down.
It takes you down. And I think that's where you found yourself.
Yeah.
Where you gave and gave and gave until you were, scraping the bottom of your cup to the point where it couldn't sustain you anymore.
No.
Your body. So you chose The Road Home as your title.
Mm-hmm. Because I found home. Yeah. Rochelle knows my story. I don't story is a funny word for me now, because there are stories that you get stuck in that hold you back, but then
some define you.
some define you. So if you know my family,
well, let's assume many of the
people don't know my family.
Yeah.
So I am one of 3 daughters with my parents. I have an older sister who's 5 years older than me, Brenda, and a younger sister, Carrie, my mom and dad. And when I was 5, maybe 6, I was in kindergarten. Carrie got very sick. She had a convulsion and it left her hemiplegic. So she's paralyzed on her left side and she has physical and mental disabilities.
Yeah.
And back in the 70s, to have a child with exceptional special needs, she also was epileptic and had seizures all the time. It was, I still marvel.
Well, the help isn't even there.
There was no support. There was absolutely,
it's just you and your parents and family.
And you think about it, that time, we all talk about inclusion now.
Yeah.
Back then in the 70s, it was not, the inclusion wasn't even, it was exclusion.
The R word was, something that we just spit out, and it was, and people made fun of people with disabilities. And I mean, to the point that my mother grew up with cerebral palsy and had a paralyzed arm and chose not to let anyone know. So she raised 2 children with this and having to have surgeries and all kinds of things just because the 70s, the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s were brutal. And that's the time
that's the time.
And was growing up.
And it was difficult because there really wasn't, in the educational system, there wasn't a place for her. And my parents, to their testament, they paved the way. They advocated for her without even knowing how to. It was literally a God-given gift that they had to know. Because my mom said, I just took care of her the way I took care of you. Yes. Yeah. And so I think because I was so close in age to Carrie, that I got a front row seat. Too. Yes. So it was really hard because we weren't welcomed by people.
Right.
My parents' circle got very small. It was just, I think about moments of going on the school bus and just dreading it and not knowing what was going to happen. And so I grew up trying to stay 2 steps ahead of everything, looking for safe places, adjusting myself so that I would be accepted.
Yeah.
And then I found myself feeling that I wasn't good enough. Just, it didn't matter what we did. There was.
Yeah, because it was outside of yourselves.
So
we have no control on other people's reactions to us.
No.
And I mean, I'm thankful that so much has changed, but there's still so many things that need to change with people. People are just all different little packages carrying spirits that the Lord loves equally, so it hurts to see someone using that word or treating someone who's different. And it's
the amazing thing about that is that Carrie didn't carry any of the weight. She didn't. She would come home and she would be happy. And I would come home and I would be like, you wouldn't believe what happened today, right? And it
so you carried it for her, and
I carried it for her, and I also carried it for we all carried it. We all carried it. And I wouldn't change it for a minute because it's a very much a part of who I am. But there was always a part of me that I always felt that I was the problem. If I only did this, then maybe they would have done this. Right. Or I can't tell you how I longed to be invited to tables that I just wasn't meant to be.
Right.
And the hurt with that. Or, well, maybe if I just did this, then maybe they would like me better. Or
I mean, anytime we come from any kind of dysfunction in the family, and it's not that your parents were amazing, right? And my parents, they were pretty good too. They did what they could with what they had.
Yeah.
However, there was dysfunction within the family, and whenever you come from that, we always come out of it a little bit banged up, and so we think everyone can see all those dents in us. And I think that people like you and I, like
Mhm.
you felt as though you had to have a certain group of people that to belong.
Mhm.
And for me, we used to joke, I was the Borg. I was simulate. The more the better. And I would have so many people.
Mhm.
And it's taken until just, quality over quantity. And I'm not saying that the people that I had before were less than. That's
No.
not it. They can't give me everything I need.
Mhm.
We need to focus, filter through God,
Mhm.
and then everything else just kind of falls into place. You and I are people that like to be introspective.
Becoming so critically ill
Mhm.
and then opening up a way of healing that I found my connection and my home in myself. And then I realized how much I looked outside of myself for validation, for love, everything.
Mhm.
I did. So I found my home.
Yeah.
And I was talking to you about the inner child healing.
Mhm.
I found for me, this is going to sound crazy too, but TikTok really helped me. The algorithm, you got to get the algorithm right. Trust me. You see that there's other people out there who are also on a healing journey.
Right. Yeah.
And what I did learn is that the stronger that my connection came in my heart, and that I realized that I could just lay down all the worries and troubles that I had, and that, give them to God.
You don't have to carry them.
You don't have to carry them.
Yeah.
And then you have this amazing ability to create, but also discern. Discernment is it, and being in alignment, like really honestly waking up every day and saying, this works for me.
Yeah. It is God's wisdom through us, right?
Mhm.
It just and it's such a powerful divider between what we think
Yeah.
and what is actually happening.
So with TikTok, I like that you can go and you can find things. And there's one thing that I actually just saw this week that kind of brought this whole experience full circle. And it's a 7-minute video. It's from an old Oprah show of a gentleman named John Bradshaw, who does a 7-minute inner child healing. And it is about bringing yourself home.
Right.
But it's you as a young child, and bringing that child in, holding that, and going forward every single day, and honoring that child and letting them know, I got you, everything's okay, we're good.
And you know what? And so being a Christian woman, there would have been a time when I would have heard that and thought, that sounds weird and new agey. I'm going to say something right now, and this will not be edited. I had the very same conversation with a young man a couple weeks ago who came to a Bible study, and he asked me a very good question. It was, how can I love others like I love myself if I don't love myself? And I sat there with him and took him back to a time when he could remember, and that was that inner child. A time when he could remember being pure of heart and pure of love and pure of hope, and wanting to be able to do something great with himself. And when we took him back to that, and I connected the dots, that is who God sees when he looks at us. That's who he wants us to remember and to be. There's nothing new agey or weird about it. No. It's just finding yourself, right?
And carrying that in your heart, letting you know that you're safe. And I even find myself at times thinking about myself laying on the floor, not being able to breathe, and saying, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You've got this. You're going to be okay. Things are going to be okay. And I think also too, that when you go back and you can see things, you remove the emotion, and you can understand why you feel and think a certain way. And you're still going to have these little triggers, or you're going to have these little thoughts, but then
because we're still human,
you get the overwhelming comfort that it's going to be okay.
Right.
And you don't have to react.
You don't. Peace that passes understanding, and it can only come from God. And if we make room, there's a hole in everyone's heart it's like a God-sized hole, and we spend all this time trying to fill it with everything else, expectations, with
Oh,
being
expectations is a
liked,
bad one.
right?
Yes, being liked.
Being not hurting anyone, being a favorite. And all of those are just distractions from a spot that can only truly be filled by God, right? So I think once we connect, we can become ourselves.
Yes.
Right?
And I had a moment, and it still makes me emotional thinking about it, is that I saw my younger self sitting there.
Right.
And when she looked up at me and said, I can't wait to be you. I remember as a kid imagining what I was going to be.
Yeah.
That was that was the moment for me that I found home.
Yeah.
And
I've often said to you, I mean, before this happened, I wish you could see you through my eyes, because I see you through God's eyes. So when I see you, I see nothing but love, nothing but hope, nothing but this amazing human being who is put here to do wonderful things and for God to use. And he's doing that. Like, I mean, today he's doing that again. But I think he does it almost every day in your life, with your children, with your family, with people you speak to. You're gracious, you're kind. What would you say is the rainbow in that particular storm, but also maybe in your life?
In my life, this experience, but also writing this almost like a testimony to a life-changing experience for me. The notion of chasing rainbows to me was always like a silly, unattainable dream.
Dreamers,
right?
Dreamers
and
chase rainbows.
Honestly, now I spend my energy going back to those feelings that I had when I was a young child, when I did believe in dreams.
When children chase rainbows, right?
And you believe good things come from love, and that things will come to you in the right time. And you know, I heard this phrase, it's a John Denver song. The phrase is, hold on tightly and let go lightly.
Yeah.
And I just realized all the things that I was holding on to, I didn't need to hold on to them. And when you let go lightly with grace and ease and compassion, it's not dramatic. It's just everything just flows as it should. And honestly, too, the other thing is that 70s music, I like to meditate or just to have still moments and think and just let everything go. But 70s music, so my friendships got stronger. People re-entered my life. And what I did was, honestly, I didn't tell a lot of people that I was sick. I kept it very private.
Right.
I wanted to make sure that I could share it when I was at a point where I felt strong enough, because there was a time where I was so broken and I was focused on trying to rebuild myself.
The old self?
The old self.
Yeah.
And I needed to start, I couldn't put the pieces back together. I had to rebuild.
Well, when you're saying that, it makes me think of Karen's fractured rainbows.
And what I did find is that my friendships got stronger. The ones that were meant to stay.
Right. Stay.
Others trailed away, and that's okay. It's
try
fine.
to get rid of me. No.
No. But the relationships got stronger, and I really, really learned that in my sickness and stepping back from my life, because I had nothing to give. I was completely, utterly empty. Yeah. And I really took notice of who were the people that were there for me, and who were the people that checked in just to have access to me.
And that can be a very dangerous time too. But when you're so empty, there's two possibilities that you can fill up with. You can either fill up with a new way of love, fulfillment, thankfulness, or you can fill up with anger,
frustration,
why me? And I mean, you chose the better path.
It wasn't easy though.
Yeah,
it is so easy.
See, that's actually a good thing to get across, is because it doesn't come easily. It takes work, and it's something that you have to revisit over and over again, because things pop up.
They pop up. And the one thing that I learned is that this is absent of God, but nobody's coming to save you. You have to do the work. You have to do it yourself.
Right. And God wants you to do that too.
Yes, you need to do that yourself, and you're not going to get the apologies. You're not going to get the closure. You have to figure out a way for yourself
people aren't
for
going to do
forgiveness.
for you what you would do for them.
No, and that's
we
the other
can't
thing.
expect it.
And how you said the
Expectations, right?
expectations.
Right.
I had to lose the expectations because I think I probably put unrealistic expectations on people, thinking
I've been there and I've done that, and you know what that brings? Sadness and disappointment. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's easy to think that when our world stops, and it does, especially when something as traumatic as what you've experienced has happened, your world stops and it becomes all about just rebuilding from there. But everyone else is carrying on.
It is. It was very hard for me. I love my family with all my heart, but I was off on the sidelines and I was watching them carry on without me. Right. I couldn't take my daughter dress shopping for the prom. Yeah. I'm very fortunate that her girlfriend and her mother did and stepped up and did it. Yeah. But it's still something but it was an expectation, right, though. And I had an expectation that that's something I would always do with my daughter, and be able to, and to lose those expectations and know that what's coming for you is better than you can imagine. Yeah. So don't put your got caught up in imagining or trying to create. You create, but it has to be in alignment with you and not coming from a need or an empty cup. Empty cup. Yeah. Okay. First of all, I'd love to thank you for being here. Is there anything else you'd like to add? I want to thank you for this opportunity, because you asking me and inviting me to participate in this book with all these wonderful women was a real turning point in my healing. I needed to write this down because I can't even remember. I can't imagine feeling the way that I did back then, and I can't even trying, like, I have a memory of it, but I don't have that hurt in my heart or that feeling or that there's no lack. And I hope that you've come to the realization that you're in this book because you're supposed to be, right? And that, yes, all you ladies are amazing and wonderful, and she fits right in there with you, right? You're my rainbow. Okay, thank you so much, Jill. I'm just going to close in prayer. Okay. And give me your hand. I love you. Okay. So thank you, Lord, for giving me my wonderful friend, Jill. She has been such a blessing in my life. And I know that her story will be such a blessing in so many others. I thank you for leading the ladies from the Chasing Rainbows book into both of our lives. And I can't wait to see what you do with it. Amen. Thank you to our audience for listening.